Okay, just a brief, some brief comments from me. The transition reports from the 13 transition teams, those reports are now available on the city's homepage at houstontx.gov. Secondly, as it relates to the summer youth program, that program is still very much active and continuing to ask for the support of the business community and others who can hire kids for the summer from June the 13th through August the 6th at approximately $3,000 per child to sponsor a kid for the summer youth program. We've got thousands of kids that are seeking summer jobs, and I'm still pushing and encouraging and asking for companies to participate in that program. The turnaround initiative, I think the next meeting is on May the 18th. So that's coming up, and we'll be providing you with more information on that. And then on flooding, you know, the two priorities have always been since the actual flood: housing, and of course we've got, I think it's about 130 rooms. Is it? 133 rooms, and I think the number is close to 400 people. Those include, you know, the families, but a total of 400 people that are in the temporary housing. And of course, they will remain there. We're prepared to keep them there for several weeks, but as their units, for example, if they live in an apartment, as their units become available or back online, then they will be transitioned back to their particular apartments. And so, those steps are taking place as we speak now, but they are prepared. We were prepared to keep them there for another week, 2 weeks. And then all of that, with respect to most of those rooms or those costs, that's being covered by the relief fund, the Greater Houston Storm Relief Fund, paid for all of the individuals that were in the M.O. Campbell Center when we transitioned them to the extended stays or hotels on Friday night. So I'm very thankful for people who have contributed to that fund to make those type of efforts possible. Let me just stop, and I'll take questions that you may have.
Mayor, how much is the total? How much have people donated? Do you have a more exact figure?
I think the figure is it's more than $1 million. I'll say between $1 million and $1.5 million. The people have contributed, and they're continuing to contribute. And of course, this is all being supervised by Anthony Chase is chairing the board for the Greater Houston Storm Relief Fund, and then there's an advisory board, and they will be the ones who will be making the decisions on how the monies will be expended.
Can you, I guess besides, I mean, do you have a specific amount allotted for hotels? And then will they be used for any sort of overtime for any of the cleanup crews, that kind of thing?
It's not being used for any operational costs. The monies will not be used for operational costs. So the fund is not paying for debris removal or anything like that. It's primarily being used to assist the flood victims themselves. And they will be working in collaboration with other nonprofits, faith-based organizations like neighborhood centers, like Catholic Charities, United Way, but it's a rental assistance. They may work out a criteria where there may be some, for example, some assistance for people who lost their vehicles that meet a certain, you know, threshold level. But I'm leaving it up to that board to oversee it, because most of the people on that board come from the companies themselves that have contributed the funding.
So most of it's corporate donations?
Yes.
And then, so just to clarify, as far as the apartments, you said you have about 400 people in 130 rooms. These are all Greenspoint area folks, or? They
are in primarily in that Greenspoint area. And then I think the Red Cross has put about 15 families up in that 290 area that covers like the Jersey Village area.
And then they're going to be, and you're prepared to have them in hotels for how much longer? You think
I would say 2 to 3 weeks. The goal is, and we're working very closely with the 17 apartment complexes. And so as their units, for example, come online, or as other housing becomes available. Now that this area has been declared a disaster area and FEMA is on board, HUD, of course, is expediting this process. We had already identified about 90 available housing units in the Greenspoint area, but we couldn't put people there until FEMA came on board and HUD gave the approval. but we've already identified 90 units. So people will come, and they can get the housing vouchers. So they'll come from the extended stays of the hotels and then be given more permanent housing. So the goal is to try to transition them away from the hotels and back into their units or other available units. Because, for example, Ardmore Court on the first floor, many of those units are going to be offline for quite some time.
And then just one more money question about, I guess you guys are, how are you guys funding all the overtime and the extra resources it's taking to do all the cleanup, considering you're always talking about a budget deficit? And
well, you just have to move things around in order to meet special needs. This is one of those emergency sort of situations, and we are operating within our existing revenue stream to meet those demands. It's challenging. The budget is already tight. But as you can see, debris removal was one of my top priorities, and we've already hit we've hit every district where there has been debris that's out there. I was at the informal meeting, for example, in Northwest Houston the other night, and asked for a show of hand of how many homes where debris had been removed by the city, and most of the people in that room had raised their hands. So the first sweep in terms of debris removal will be completed by next week. And when you compare that to Hurricane Allison back in 2001, I think it took about 6 weeks or more. So even on the debris removal, we are on an accelerated pace. And people are giving the city high marks on that. So we'll work within our existing means, but I want to thank the city of Houston, the employees, Solid Waste, the contractors, for just being very aggressive at debris removal. And again, that's triggered in large part, too, about the threat of the Zika virus, so some public health issues. And quite frankly, when people have been flooded 2 and 3 times, when people are coming home and they're seeing the debris is no longer there, that's a shot in the arm, too, for them. So we're just trying to do everything we can to ease the trauma or to reduce the stress points on people's lives.
Even before the flood, you made a big push to homeowners, renters,
Yes.
get out in your yard, get this stuff cleaned up,
Yes.
anything that can gather standing water. Residents we talked to say 6 weeks or more into the city's comprehensive cleanup, you still have scenes like this. You've got the trash piles sitting out.
Yeah.
They're saying the city's not following its own advice. What would you say to those people?
Come on, don't you be negative. The reality is that this is the 10th week of removing trash and tires. This program started on February 13th, and I think all of the reporters who are here, you heard me start talking about the sweeps that were going in the neighborhoods way before this storm, right here in sessions just like this. So the reality...
April 1st, you still had piles like this across from a store in City Park.
Reporters need to be fair. Be fair. Don't do a disservice to Houstonians. This city is 670 square miles. It's a large city. You're not going to cover all of the city in terms of removing every tire and trash in just a matter of a few weeks. We're in the 10th week. We started removing tires. Dr. Peirce spoke to this beforehand. I think there's so much to be positive about. Now, has everyone's home been reached at this point in time? No. But that would be unrealistic. So your question is unrealistic.
Well, when can they expect relief in these non-flood areas?
Well, we are dealing with non-flood area, and we're dealing with flooding areas. And so what I would ask you, if people are dealing with a flooding situation, they are in crisis. You first have to take care of your priorities, number one. So your question is inherently unfair, and it does a disservice to the people in the city of Houston.
It's the people in the city of Houston who are saying this.
No, the people you talk to. There are 2.2 million people in the city of Houston. And I think there comes a point in time when people have to say, time out, your question is unfair. The reality is that we start picking up tires and debris back in February before the storm started. And you know that.
And this is April 1st. This is before the storms.
And we will continue to do as much as we can within our existing means. Number one, there are limited resources on every end. There are limited resources. And I know you're not saying to me, and I hope you're not saying to the people, to a person that you talk to, and I don't know how many people you talk to, that the city hasn't done anything. You're not, I don't think you're taking that position to me. Because if you are, you would be very much wrong. So I don't think you're taking that position with me. The reality is we're in the 10th week of removing debris and illegal dumping that exists within the city. Everyone has a responsibility to deal with illegal dumping. And the city will do everything within its means in order to reduce trash and debris. And it has been an issue in this city for a long, long time, a long time. There are too many tires, too much trash, too much illegal dumping. But you cannot expect the city to cure all of these issues and then on top of that, dealing with the flooding problem all at the same time. And so I think there comes a point in time when even reporters have to be reasonable, understandable, and not just focus on the negatives when employees are working very hard to meet the needs of Houstonians within the city, within our existing cost constraints. So I appreciate your question. I hope you appreciate my answer.
Are the 6-day weeks going to continue on the cleanups, even beyond?
It's a 7-day cleanup.
After
The crews are out there every single day. It's 7 days a week. And if you compare the cleanup under my administration, after the second most rainfall since 2001, Hurricane Allison, when it took almost 6 weeks plus to clean up the debris, we are making our first sweep throughout the city of Houston, and that's been done in 2 weeks. I think that's incredible. And I want to thank the city employees and the contractors who are working extra. Now, that's a positive story. That's a positive story. And I know sometimes positiveness doesn't sell, but you can't change the facts to meet your story or the gist of your story. The facts are what the facts are. And I will always stand up for employees who are busting their behinds and doing an excellent job and making a real difference. And I think if you ask Houstonians, is there debris being moved up? I think the Houstonians will tell you yes. And if you ask Houstonians, were city workers out there on Thursday morning and Friday morning, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I think they will tell you yes. But those are positive stories. And that speaks to positive results. And that speaks to what Houston is all about. From a crisis, doing some amazing things, and trying to do everything you can to put people back on track. Those are the positive. I recognize that sometimes positiveness doesn't sell, but those are the realities, and you can't deny the realities. But I appreciate the question.
Mayor, an estimated 1,800 units in Greenspoint were damaged due to the flooding. Do you have an estimate of the number that are now habitable, and what is the city's role in determining that habitability?
Yeah, there were close to 2,000 units that were damaged. Yeah.
Just to give an exact number, we had in the 17 apartment complexes in Greenspoint, we had 1,943 units that took on some form of water. 210 of those units took on more than 6 feet of waters. So we have been meeting, Mayor had a first conference call with apartment owners last Thursday as part of our relief efforts, and Public Works and Engineering had a meeting yesterday with apartment owners to go over the permitting process to make it as efficient as we could be with a priority on health and safety, but making sure that the repair of our apartment complexes that have been affected are not going to be inhibited by lack of being able to get usual paperwork. And I really want to commend our Public Works and Engineering staff. When you talk to those apartment owners, you definitely get the tone of cooperation. And from the mayor's side on it, you also get that sense of urgency as well.
Do you have a sense for the number of those units now that are safe for folks to continue living in? Because a number of families have continued to stay in their flooded units, rather than going to the shelter last week, and so have not received that assistance from the city.
To that end, I really want to thank our employees of the Public Health Department who have been canvassing door to door. We've had a number of community organizations, neighborhood centers, Texas Organizing Project, who continue that. As we are able to get those reports in, we always try and go through 311, which is a good suggestion for your dumping question as well, to be able to get that report categorized. And once we're aware of possible health issues with it, we can send them one to that door, make that assessment, and as we have resources available, be able to deal with that, so.
Do you know, I mean, I was just curious, since most of those apartments are all like in the floodway anyway, are they all going to be rebuilt, or are there any that you guys are considering? I mean, is there a federal buyout, or have you guys gone down that route for some of these apartment complexes?
We haven't done that yet. I know there are 17 apartment complexes that we have identified where there was damage and that we're working with. Much of the damage has been on the first floor. And in most cases, with the exception, I think, of maybe 1 or 2 apartments, they're able to get those apartment units back online probably within a matter of a few weeks. I think there's only 1 or 2 where the damage will take much, much longer to get those apartments back online. And for residents who were living in those particular apartment units, they would probably have to be repositioned someplace else for an extended period of time.
Is there a dollar figure yet on public losses, public damage?
The public damage, from what I was told today, I believe we have met our threshold. You know what the threshold level is?
The county threshold is $14 million. Reported last night, we're currently at $42 million. So we're beyond the threshold. I'm sorry, $32 million for Harris County. So we're beyond the threshold for the individual and public assistance. And the state is also beyond its threshold of $35 million. So the administration in contact with the State Office of Emergency Management to see about the governor making the second submission for public assistance back to the state.
Okay.
Is that 32 private, public, city, and county?
Yes, and we can
So
make
it's total.
we can make available to you the Texas Department of Emergency Management updated situation report that lists all the specific numbers by county.
Okay. So from all indications, we've met the threshold, for the public threshold as well. Okay? Thank you all so very much. Yes.
There's a subdivision as part of the sponsorship program for waste collection that told me that they haven't gotten their rebate for the first quarter this year. Wondering if that has something to do with, the anticipated
Has nothing to do at all.
elimination. No.
The budget
Okay.
hasn't been approved.
Right.
So everything is in place right now through the end of June.
Yeah. Any idea why they haven't gotten theirs?
I don't know if they've sent in their, isn't
They
it?
have to send in their request for a rebate.
You have to send in the request for the rebate. It has nothing to do with the proposal that's in my proposed budget for 2017. So I don't know, but we'll check.
Mayor, you
Yes.
mentioned that you want to put 100 to 175 police officers, additional police officers on the
Yes.
street. Is that per shift, per day, per week? What's the unit of measurement there?
Chief Montalvo is working the details of that out. Because when you start putting them on the street, of course, many of them are holding positions that civilians can occupy. And so it's bringing civilians in and you gradually put them on the street. But we're working through with that, and there may be more on that at the State of the City address next week.
Mayor,
Sure.
obviously the next part of the body camera rollout, you guys voted on that today.
Yes.
Just what would you say to the concerns that some people have about it being, that all that data being held in-house versus, in a cloud situation by a private vendor?
I think we're very comfortable with the integrity of the system. I mean, many of those questions have been asked and answered on several different occasions. I've gone over and taken a look, but I'm confident that the integrity of the system is very sound. Okay? Thank you all so very, very much. Appreciate you.
Still in important neighborhoods.